Scotland is sparsely populated compared to many other countries, accounting for about 8% of the UK population. Scotland does, however, have its fair share of science fiction authors, one or two of them exceptionally successful. Who springs to mind when you think of Scottish science fiction authors? Can you think of any? I'm going to start with Scottish-born authors, and then we'll cover some others who've made Scotland their home one way or another. First up then is Gary Gibson, who was born in Glasgow in 1965. Gary has been writing since he was in his teens apparently, but his first novel, Angel Stations, wasn't published until 2004, and it's a tale of alien technology, portals, revenge, and the threat of imminent destruction. He's probably best known for his shoal sequence, starting with Stealing Light from 2007. And in the 25th century, the shoal control faster-than-light travel, dominating trade. Dakota Merrick, a former military pilot, transports an exploration team seeking an FTL drive. The shoal, wary of losing control, challenge humanity's quest for independence, unwilling to relinquish their monopoly over a technology that they acquired through an ancient genocide. The series continues with Nova War. Dakota, aware of the shoal's dark secret, strives to prevent the Nova War and contain dangerous knowledge. Captured by the Bandati, she realises humanity's understanding of the galaxy is flawed. With the shoal's rivals, the emissaries, waging war, Dakota seeks peace through cooperation, fearing the unavoidable Nova conflict. In Empire of Light, the third book, the Nova War rages on and the emissaries launch a ruthless offensive, pushing humanity to the brink. Dakota embarks on a quest to uncover the secrets behind the Maker caches, while Corso grapples with leadership challenges amid political turmoil and assassination attempts. The fate of humanity hinges on the decoding of ancient messages by Ty Whitecloud, imprisoned for alleged war crimes, and Corso must ensure Whitecloud's survival, even if it means facing opposition from Dakota herself. Gary Gibson says that he didn't write Stealing Light, the first book, with a series in mind, so it can be read in isolation, but it sold well, and he thought that there was more to tell in that world. And with the beloved art of Chris Foss in his mind, he described the towers in Nova War as having broad stripes, a frequent Fossian motif, and was then chuffed when the cover art for the hardback edition of his book had a very familiar feel. Ken MacLeod was born in Stornoway and now lives in Gourock. He has 19 novels published, the first of those being The Star Fraction, which appeared in 1996. He has a history of left-leaning politics, and that's often reflected in his books, whether that be via some techno-utopian anarchy or libertarian anarcho-capitalist society. Big government is generally frowned upon in his books. His work is a nice mix of series and solo books. The Corporation Wars trilogy is really one big book split into three, and I understand that there's an omnibus edition kicking around somewhere. And the Corporation Wars is set in a future where interstellar exploration is conducted remotely by AI. Among his 8 Singleton books is Intrusion, published in 2012. Hugh and Hope Morrison, along with their young son, live in a near-future London gripped in the aftermath of something called the Warm War. The Labour Party governs the UK with a technocratic regime, advocating for a free and social market strategy. However, this translates into coercive measures to enforce conformity, prompting a clash when the pregnant Hope refuses the state's mandate to take the fix, a single-dose pill that would correct any genetic errors in her unborn child, sparking a moral quandary and resistance against societal pressures. This is a benevolent dystopia where government intervention is well-meaning and for our own good, with police endorsement for good measure. Whatever your political persuasion, MacLeod will push your buttons at some point in this book. His most recent series, the Lightspeed trilogy, begins with Beyond the Hallowed Sky. Graduate student Lakshmi Novak receives a perplexing letter from her future self containing equations for faster-than-light travel. This sets off a chain of events involving political defections, exploration of alien worlds, and encounters with enigmatic figures. As the stories converge, themes of separatism, ecological crises, and political intrigue unfold, leaving us eagerly anticipating the next instalment in this politically charged and thought-provoking science fiction saga. The third book in the trilogy comes out this week. Stay tuned, because there'll be more about Ken MacLeod on the channel in the coming weeks, so do watch out for that. Perhaps Scotland's favourite son from a science fiction point of view, although his literary fiction, no M, sold far more books. Iain M Banks is, of course, the author of the justly famous Culture novels. Each of those, I think, stands on its own merits, but it is part of a larger, coherent whole. All are set in the same post-scarcity galactic utopia, and the Culture novels mostly explore the moral dilemmas inherent when an advanced civilization encounters a less advanced one. Rejecting the prime directive familiar to fans of Star Trek, Banks goes all in on the side of interference via the good offices of contact and its more shadowy spooks in special circumstances. I love the Culture books for their scope and their scale and the varied and quirky drones and ships and for their optimistic vision of a future society, which sounds like somewhere we could all live long and fulfilling lives. There are megastructures, mostly benevolent AIs, convincing alien and humanoid species, and some really awesome plot twists. I'm looking at you in particular, use of weapons. His non-culture sci-fi books are also fantastic, covering uploaded mind states, more megastructures, a lazy gun, and a richly imagined alien society inhabiting a gas giant. And there's also a collection of short stories, state-of-the-art, mostly set in the culture. A prolific writer of quality, Banks was lost to us all too soon back in 2013. A more recent Scottish talent, Martin MacInnes, has 3 novels published, all of which blend science fiction with everyday life, reflecting on the tensions between digital and technological advancement and the corresponding ecological damage. His debut novel, Infinite Ground, was published in 2016. Amidst a scorching South American summer, a family gathers for dinner, only for Carlos to vanish mysteriously. A seasoned inspector, now semi-retired, takes on the case, expecting a routine investigation, but facing some eerie complexities. Carlos's workplace appears dubious. His colleagues speak of strange changes in him, and forensic analysis reveals baffling anomalies within his biological makeup. The inspector's investigation takes him into the heart of the rainforest, unveiling a blend of terror and awe. Martin MacInnes' 3rd novel, In Ascension, was published to much acclaim last year, and it was longlisted for the Booker Prize. It's a pretty rare occurrence for a science fiction book. Lee Hassenbosch's journey begins amid Rotterdam's waterways, escaping a troubled past to immerse herself in the mysteries of marine biology. As she explores the ocean's depths, her path intertwines with groundbreaking discoveries, from the depths of the Atlantic Trench to the possibilities of outer space exploration. With each revelation, Lee confronts profound questions about life's origins and humanity's place in the cosmos. And yet, as her career propels her towards the stars, she grapples with the weight of leaving behind her family and the familiar comforts of home. MacInnes crafts a tale that blends scientific curiosity with personal introspection, inviting us on an odyssey that spans from the depths of the ocean floor to the far reaches of space, all while reflecting on the enduring bonds that tether us to our origins and our aspirations. I'll be very interested to see what MacInnes does next. Naomi Mitcheson, Baroness Mitcheson via her marriage, was a prolific writer with over 100 novels and 1,000 shorter works to her name. She wrote plays, she wrote historical fiction, non-fiction, fantasy and, importantly for us, a smidgen of science fiction, a genre to which she came later in her career. The first and best known of these science fiction works is 1962's Memoirs of a Spacewoman, an examination of communication, sexuality and a pitch for society to be more cognizant of maternity and the workplace. The main character, Mary, who is also the narrator, is a communications specialist, a scientist and an explorer. Humans have spread across the galaxy and have encountered many alien species. In the course of the book, Mary visits a number of worlds with different forms of life. She's impacted personally by the time dilation that she experiences on her travels. Mitcheson's descriptions, her speculations on biology, or rather the xenobiology, were unusually vivid at the time. So there's a few heavy-hitting Scottish authors there. Any that you've read and enjoyed? Can you think of any more science fiction authors that would fit into this tartan category? Do let me know in the comments. Still to come, though, more fantastic science fiction writers, all of whom were born elsewhere, but who made Scotland their home. Charles Stross was born in Leeds, England, but has lived in Edinburgh for many, many years, to the point where I actually thought he was Scottish. I was surprised to find that he was actually English by birth. Anyway, he's been writing science fiction for over 20 years, and his books include a mix of space opera, cyberpunk, artificial intelligence, post-human singularities, short stories, and a government bureaucracy tasked with fighting eldritch horrors conjured into existence by the wrong kind of maths, and my personal favourite, parallel worlds. His first novels were the Eschaton duology, a space opera set in the 2400s consisting of Singularity Sky and Iron Sunrise. In the 25th century, human society has depended for several hundred years on faster-than-light travel and an artificial intelligence called the Eschaton. Interstellar colonies are scattered all over, and one, the New Republic, has become a classic refuge for anti-technological holdouts. But the New Republic is suddenly under attack, literally, by the technology it has tried to suppress. And in the second book, a G2 star doesn't just explode, not without outside interference, so the survivors of the planet Moscow, which was annihilated in just such an event, have launched a counterattack against the most likely culprit, the neighbouring system of New Dresden. But New Dresden wasn't responsible, and as deadly missiles approach their target, Rachel Mansour, agent for the interests of Old Earth, is assigned to find out who was. Both books were shortlisted for the Hugo, which is pretty impressive for a debut. The Laundry Files is a series of 9 books which imagine a world where magic is real, a branch of mathematics in fact, which if done incorrectly can summon extra-dimensional entities. Lovecraftian horrors that are very bad news indeed. But don't worry, Her Majesty's government has a secret agency tasked with defending the realm from the scum of the multiverse, nicknamed the Laundry by the civil servants and the computer geeks that work there. The main through character is Bob Howard, recruited after his master's project nearly destroyed a town of Wolverhampton by accident. I love a combination of Lovecraftian horror and a very British government bureaucracy. There's a 10th book on the way, which apparently wraps up the Bob storyline. There's a spin-off series called The New Management, which has 3 or 4 books in it now. The original 6 Merchant Prince books were published from 2004 to 2010, and Merchant Princes is an intriguing mix of high fantasy, alternative history, parallel worlds, secret organisations, revolution and paranoia. I love it, and one of these days I'm going to do a separate video on it. There are 3 follow-on books that were published more recently which continue the story, making more use of the parallel worlds trope, espionage, political intrigue and a cheeky spaceship too. Stross has a remarkable range from a plot point of view, and I'm really looking forward to reading his next space opera, which is due out sometime in 2026, so we have a year or 2 to wait. Christopher Priest was definitely English, but for the last 5 or 10 years of his life he lived on the Isle of Bute in Scotland, so for the purposes of this video then, we shall consider him to be an adopted Scot. Christopher Priest followed in the wake of New Wave, somewhat of it, influenced by it, but very much ploughing his own furrow. I have a number of his books, but I'm most familiar with his earlier work from the 1970s. But he was writing up until his untimely death earlier this year. Inverted World is a classic that I've spoken about on this channel a number of times, and I read Fugue for a Darkening Island earlier this year, a harrowing meditation on how quickly things fall apart. 1977's A Dream of Wessex can be read as a straightforward story about a group of 20th century dreamers who create a consensus virtual reality future. Once they enter their imaginary world, they're unable to remember who they are or where they're from. On another level, the novel is itself an extended metaphor for the way in which extrapolated futures are created. The year is 1985, and the Wessex Project, a privately funded project based beneath Maiden Castle, discovers a method to transport the collective unconscious of some of England's most brilliant minds into an illusory and ideal society. The objective is to gather information vital to human survival on Earth, but in the process, power, deception and love conspire to jeopardise the philanthropic programme. Priest is perhaps most widely known for his novel The Prestige, which was later made into a movie of the same name by Christopher Nolan. In a neat closing of that circle, Priest wrote a book in 2008, The Magic, the story of a film, which recounts from his perspective the intertwined process of making the novel and then the movie. Priest wrote 21 novels, 5 short story collections, edited an anthology, produced a number of non-fiction works, and was not above writing books to pay the bills under a variety of pseudonyms, including the novelisations of the movies Mona Lisa and Short Circuit. Priest was a great of British, and by extension Scottish, kind of literary genre fiction, and sadly is no longer with us. In a convenient case of 2 for the price of 1, Nina Allan lived with and eventually married Christopher Priest. She's also English by birth, but I'll apply the same logic for her as for her husband and consider her to be an adopted Scot. Her debut, The Race, a novel in 4 parts, was published in 2014. 2 of the sections take place in our world, whereas the other 2 are set in an alternative near future. The Race intricately weaves together the lives of Jenna, Christy, Alex and Marie across different times and places. In a future England, Jenna's brother Dell races smart dogs, genetically engineered greyhounds telepathically linked to human runners. And meanwhile, Christy grapples with trauma from her past and investigates her brother Derek's potential involvement in a disappearance. And years later, Alex reconnects with Christy and unravels the mysteries hidden in her stories. Marie, kidnapped for her empathic abilities, embarks on a journey to unlock the secrets of her past and decode extraterrestrial messages. Allan's mesmerising story explores themes of family, identity and the unknown, captivating us with its richly layered storytelling. Michel Faber was born in the Netherlands, spent his youth in Australia and then moved with his young family to Scotland in the early 90s. Not easily categorised from a genre point of view, Faber has written a couple of books that fit into the broad church that is science fiction. Perhaps the best known of these is Under the Skin, his first novel, which was published in the year 2000. We follow Icily, an extraterrestrial sent to Earth to kidnap hitchhikers for her alien corporation's meat trade. Surgically altered to look human, she grapples with her deformed body and the moral implications of her job. After a traumatic assault, she begins to question her role, especially when confronted with the horror of the processing of the victims. As she nears her breaking point, a final encounter forces her to confront her actions and ultimately to choose her fate. Faber's gripping tale explores themes of identity, morality, factory farming, and ultimately the human condition. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time, bye for now.